Whitechapel's probably most famous as the location for the Jack the Ripper murders in the late 19th century. Many of his victims were prostitutes, and it's estimated that in the 1880s there were certainly more than 1,200 prostitutes and over 60 brothels in Whitechapel. But when you dig into the history of the area, there's much more to it than sex and murder. One of the first things you would have noticed about 19th century Whitechapel would have been the smell. 2 centuries earlier, a lot of the polluting industries were moved outside of the London city walls. The slaughterhouses for most of London were concentrated in the area, and so were the tanneries, which used dog and human urine to tan the cowhides to make leather. On a bad day, many had to wear makeshift masks just to endure the stink of the place. But the area wasn't all heavy industry and criminality. One of the most famous theatres of that time, the New Royal Pavilion Theatre, was on the Whitechapel Road, and it was one of the largest and most salubrious theatres of the time. Sadly, it's no longer with us, but in the late 19th century, it was a destination even for the upper echelons of London society, who travelled far and wide to get there, despite the smell and the risks of the surrounding streets. Whitechapel was also home to many immigrant communities, and still is. In the 19th century, there was a very large Jewish community, and it was here that the battle for Cable Street took place in 1936. Before the Second World War, Britain too struggled to contain the fascist threat, and Oswald Mosley was the leader of the British Brown Shirts, who led a march through London's East End, but he was defeated at Cable Street. And it was the local community, Jewish and Irish, that rose up together to bar his path. And the battle was a real turning point in his own fortunes. There is many a Whitechapel resident, I suspect, who would rather the district was remembered for that than the murders of the 1880s. And understandably so, I think. So if you want to find out more about this amazing area, you can read my book, The Graves of Whitechapel. There is murder and plenty of smells, but hopefully I've captured something of the spirit of the men and the women who live there.